I thought to talk tonight about trying to let go of attachments. So first, what do we mean by attachments? Attachments are just things that we desire in life. Maybe a situation, maybe a life partner, maybe things, possessions. And that's fine, but the attachment is when we impose sort of another level of desire on top of the object. So to the extent that we feel that if we ever lost that object, if the thing was ever taken away, our partner left, our pet died, that we would be devastated, that we would be diminished as a person. This isn't to say that we wouldn't be sad, we wouldn't feel hurt perhaps, but I'm talking about just a sense of almost desperation that it would be removed and the source of our peace and happiness would be taken from us. It has that quality. So in the spiritual pointer, it's heard that letting go of our attachments is a good thing. It's like, well, I'm not so sure about that, right? If we're talking about something that I want, something that I desire, and you're saying, it's a good thing to let go of that. But then we have things that are counter to each other. Why would I want to let go of something that I want? It doesn't even make any sense when you say it out loud. But somehow the spiritual pointer to let go of our attachments is bandied about in the spiritual world. And the reason that it causes some problems, or confusion at least, is that there's two possibilities for misperception. The first is that it is a strategy, a technique that's helpful to get on our path to get enlightened. In other words, if I drop my attachments, you're telling me that I have a better chance of getting enlightened. That's the misunderstanding, right? In other words, if I, gave up my inheritance and my life savings, then I'd have a better chance to get enlightened. If I left my family, who I actually adore, and to go live in a cave in India, then that would enhance my ability to get enlightened. Right? But that's just the false aspect of that interpretation of the pointer is that we would simply be exchanging one attachment, let's say for our wealth, for another, namely enlightenment. It's like it's a calculation. Yes, maybe I'd be willing to give up my wealth if I could get enlightened, but it's just more grasping. Just the object of grasping has changed. It's sort of a business transaction. Okay, I'll let go of this, wanting, financial security, but what I want in exchange is perpetual bliss. So we can see that that's we haven't given up our attachment. We've just changed the object of it. So that doesn't work. Okay, the second possibility for misinterpretation is maybe more common, and that is that we hear that pointer, to let go of our attachments, and we interpret that to mean I have to let go of the object of my attachment. Right. So if if there's a certain security, with a life partner, with a career, it's like, well, I feel strongly about that as an important aspect of my life, and to the idea that I have to give that up just doesn't feel right. Doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? But that's actually not what the pointer means at all. It doesn't have to do with the object. So, as an example, let's say you lived in a house that you quite liked. It was comfortable. You enjoyed being there, and for whatever reason, let's say you lost your job and you had to move. Yeah, you might be sad to leave the house, but if you were attached to being in the house, it would be devastating. I was happy when I lived there. I no longer have the house. Therefore, how can I be happy for the rest of my life? I mean, it felt like the source of my happiness was taken away. But we can see that the source of that attachment isn't being generated by the house. It's not being generated by the kitchen cabinets or the carpet or the roof it's not being generated from that side. It's being generated wholly from how we relate to the house. In other words, attachment is a purely internal thing. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the objects of attachment. It has to do with how we relate to the objects of attachment. So there was the third Zen patriarch. This is long ago in China. And he left behind a very short little pamphlet of verses called Verses of the Faith Mind. That's how it's often translated. And it's very short. It's only, 10 pages. And he starts out by saying, the great way is not difficult for those not attached to preferences. Right? He didn't say, the great way is not difficult for those without preferences, right? The great way is not difficult for those not attached to preferences. So he wasn't saying that preferences are a bad thing, and just our attachment to our preferences. So let's talk about the difference between preferences and attachments. Preferences are a natural part of human life. Like, for example, I prefer eating ice cream to having dental surgery. It's just a preference. So we have a lot of, preferences about different things in our life. Of course it feels better to, have a pat on the back than a blow to the head. It's why we have words like pleasurable and painful. So we can categorize our experiences. We know what we're feeling. I like this. I don't like that so much. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just part of navigating in this world of form. Of course we'll choose this. There's a preference there. But a preference is not a do or die kind of thing. It's just I prefer it. I go in and, I prefer vanilla ice cream. But if they don't have it, I don't go into a tailspin about, how life never works out and I'm not worthy and so on. It's just like, okay, then we choose something else. Attachment is quite different. Attachment is I have to have what I want. And if I don't have it, somehow somebody's to blame. Something is wrong. God doesn't like me. There's got to be some reason life is meant to work out. And when it doesn't, I demand that it should, right? As I want it to. So that's a much different flavor than just a preference, right? Okay, so one of the things that we can see is that when we're just going about in this world of form, some things, I mean, we've all known this since a very young age that, things don't always go the way we would prefer that they did. And one of the things that works against this idea of being attached to a certain outcome. Attached to a certain outcome has a certain rigidity to it, right? This is what I want. And then life may or may not fulfill our demands. It's certainly not obligated to. And sometimes does. Not because of our demands, just because that's what life was going to do anyway. But there's this sense of demanding something from life. So it's almost like this attachment is a resistance to the natural flow of life. It's a personal imposition on how I want things to be, that they turn out in a way for my benefit, right? The thing is, we don't have, when things do turn out in our favor, things do go our way, we do get the promotion, we do get the, the partner of our dreams. There's no point, there's no spiritual advantage in pretending that doesn't feel good, right? It does. There's no problem with that. We don't have to, the point isn't to suffer through this life. The point, much more to the point, is that gratitude may be appropriate when things go our way, knowing full well that they may not always. We've known that for a long time. Often a reasonable amount of time, things may go our way. Great, wonderful. Sometimes they may not. Sometimes it may be really difficult. We generally don't have a problem when things go our way. I guess there's, such a thing as feeling, vulnerable when things are really going in our favor. And it's almost like, well, but what if someday they don't? But be assured, some days they won't. That we can know. I mean, we've all had enough experience to know that life is like that. And this is what works against this sense of attachment to anything is the law of impermanence. Everything in the world of form comes and goes. Everything has a duration. Everything is always in flux. And so this attachment is an attempt to control that. And we will lose that fight every time. Right? Because life doesn't work like that. Life is always moving. And again, it's not to say that when things, pleasant things, enjoyable things happen, that we can't fully enjoy those. Beautiful, it's part of life. Right? But also know that it won't always be like that. And to demand that it should be just causes pain. Or to blame others when it doesn't. Or to, lose faith in life itself as an amazing experience as a whole. Right? So we can just notice that. And it's useful to learn to sort of let go of whenever we feel that grasping feeling, to notice that and to be willing to sort of relinquish our grip. For example, it's useful to have learned earlier in life that there's more to life than, let's say, a youthful appearance. It's helpful when you age that you're not holding on to that belief. It's useful to know or have learned earlier in life that, let's say if a financial disaster strikes at some point in one's life, maybe an unexpected medical expense, then it's useful to have learned previously that happiness isn't a function of what's in our bank account. It's useful when, let's say, a dear friend dies, to have learned earlier in life to let go of the belief that love is dependent and is only a function of the presence of this body-mind, and not something deeper than that. So it's really helpful to have seen through this kind of attachment earlier in life. It's good practice because ultimately everything will be taken. So one of the things that we're most attached to, so if we're really courageous, one of the things we could look at is our attachment to this body-mind. So this body-mind is the instrument by which we get to experience life, enjoy life, with all its ups and downs. But there's also this, if we've learned just that, let's say, loosened our grip on, let's say, opinions that we hold. So opinions and pride and, our resume and things that we've done, our storyline, all of that is, if we take that to be what we are, then when those things, if we just loosen our grip, life becomes simpler, flows better. Right? So, for example, with opinions, if we hold on to them rigidly, we find ourselves in conflict with other people often, either in the privacy of our own mind or just out in social situations. If we believe that what I truly am is my resume, is my storyline, then, when we're no longer doing that, sometimes you see that with retired people, suddenly they don't know who they are anymore. But if we just recognize that what we truly are is much, it's not fully defined by just our skill set. We might find that there's, we have plans about the future. We're quite certain how we want it to unfold and everything. And then when it doesn't happen, we're fall into despair. But if we're not holding that so tightly, then yes, we may still have plans. But sometimes when life guides us into another direction, gently or otherwise, we're okay with that too. So just this ease in relating to how this body-mind operates in the world is, to a large degree, a function of being willing to let go of things that inherently are subject to this law of impermanence. Things do come and go. And so the more we hang on, the more suffering it is. The more we let go, the more life seems to have a flow and a rhythm of its own. So that's really the purpose of this pointer. It's not a technique to get to somewhere else, and it's not a function of having to let go of our preferences, but it's feeling into those things where we're making demands on life.